All right, we're ready to go. So we're recording, so just know that if you have any questions or whatever, that I'll reiterate them for the microphone here. But this will be available for on-demand playback afterwards. So my name's Scott Sample. I'm the Cloud Success Manager for Microsoft for the Carolinas for state and local government. So I cover all the government entities across North and South Carolina that are about your size. And Steve and the team asked me to come here today to help us move forward, and that big part of that is really having you take the initiative to go in and learn some more about these tools and hopefully move us forward in a big way. So towards that end, let me just talk about why we're here today. One of the big things is the county's made a big investment in Office 365. And towards that end, they made it with Microsoft primarily for this first bullet here, security and privacy. So we have a lot of information that we deal with on behalf of our citizens, and it's up to us to be good stewards of that information, right? Both from the standpoint of data leakage and such like that, because we're talking about personal identifiable information, we're talking about protected health information, or PHI. We're also talking about criminal justice information, and I see we have some folks from the Sheriff's Department in here today as well. So those are all really important, and so why the county decided to go with Microsoft instead of some other third-party provider is we are uniquely positioned to provide these services not only the most reliably, but also with the greatest concern for security and privacy. We go and do the hard steps of making this stuff work. So where's your data exist when you put it in the cloud, as we say? It's actually up in Boydenton, Virginia. So for those of you that aren't familiar with the geography there, since you probably crossed the North Carolina-Virginia line on I-95, this is actually over near the I-85 crossing at South Hill, Virginia, just north of Carr Lake, and really near the Carr Lake Reservoir Dam in that regard. So there's a hydroelectric dam at the Carr Lake facility there that helps get us cheap power there, and it's tied back in with a secondary feed from a nuclear power plant. So we do that, one, for green reasons, but two, power is one of the major things in a data center, and so that helps make our costs considerably cheaper than the 8 cents, 7 cents a kilowatt hour that you may pay. I assume most of you are probably an electric cooperative out here in Brunswick County. Yeah, I'm in Wake EMC up where I live as well. So then towards that end, think about the size of this facility that we're in. Not this building, but I'm talking about the whole government complex here. So the data center that we're at is roughly about 4 to 5 times the physical size of the acreage on which this government center sits. That's how massively hyper-scaled we're building these data centers. It's literally about 3.5 miles from one axis, from the front of the road to the back of the last building in the data center. In fact, the first building we built, it's a 1/4 mile from the front of the building to the back of just that one building, of which we started out with 3 or 4 buildings and now have scaled out another 7 on there, and we're still building in this environment. And this is one of over 100 plus data centers across the globe that are serving these facilities. And it's not just your Office 365 environment that's out of there. Bing gets served out of there. Xbox Live gets served out of there. When the Olympics come around, like last time we had the Olympics was in Sochi, Russia, right? Those Olympics, if you watched any of the video on your computer, those were coming out of our data centers, and if you were watching, it probably came out of the Boydenton data center here for you because of how we can synchronize stuff. We do security really well there from a physical standpoint, right? We've got concertina wire around the outside. We've got locked facilities with man traps in that you have to fingerprint in. You go into the man trap, you have to fingerprint into the man trap to make sure it's the same person that opened the door as the door closed behind them. We have a down angle 3-dimensional camera that makes sure it's just you and that you're not carrying anything into the facility. And then you just get into the facility. Then there's essentially similar technology in our data center pods in there. And that's just for everything that's, anything, Bing included, right? Public access. But then inside that, in a room about as big as this room we're in right now, is our government community cloud that we have an extra set of security parameters on there. And those security parameters ascribe to the Criminal Justice Information System standards that the FBI puts out, or CJIS as we affectionately know it, so that all the people that have physical or remote access to deal with stuff in the government community cloud, not just the law enforcement data, have been federally background checked, are fingerprinted and evaluated by the Chief Security Information Officer in the state, and of course they are U.S. citizens, right? So that data has rigor in it, not just for the law enforcement stuff, but for the rest of it. And in fact, up to the north a little bit, city of Rocky Mount was a Google customer about 2 years ago. And they elected recently, because of security concerns and needs, to move off of Google and to go on to Microsoft's cloud. So they're moving to Office 365 right now. You all already are. And that effort was actually led by the city manager in this case. So an administrative level, not even a technical or IT function. And it was the School of Government at the University of North Carolina that kind of led him down that path. They didn't say you should go to Microsoft. They just said you really shouldn't be here. So know that your stuff is well preserved and that we're really taking seriously the stewardship of information that is on your shoulders as we deal with common stuff and serving the health and other needs of citizens in this county, right? So privacy and security are tantamount in everything we do. Also then, to enable you to serve the citizens better, we want to make this highly mobile in the same space. So think about that, right? Those two things are kind of at opposites of each other, security and privacy and mobility and access, but we've been doing the hard work behind the scenes to enable those controls to be in place so that on any device, anywhere where you may be at, you have access to the information. And I'm not just talking about email, which you're probably used to, right? Having it down synced to your device on a mobile device of a tablet or phone form factor, but also your files in that space, while they're still here and available and discoverable by IT. So you can literally take everything with you, right? Andy's vision is that if your machine dies, we just junk it, put a new machine. I mean, if it's truly dead, right, we're not just going to, oh, the screen blinked, we're going to throw it away and get you a new Surface Pro 3, although that'd be a really nice excuse to get one. That if it's dead, we would go and just take it away, put the new device on. You'd sign in with your Active Directory credentials. That's the identity you sign into your machine with, and everything would just magically be there, right? And you do not have that today. And so one of the things that I want you to take out of today is really a focus for using and leveraging these transformational tools that are at your disposal. IT has them, you just need to choose to use them. And hopefully that's going to enhance your overall work experience. So towards that end, right, here are some of the scenarios that we're going to very loosely go over. And this isn't going to be a series of disconnected things. We're going to kind of flow from the left to the right on this screen. So that we'll look at email and calendar on the go, not a comprehensive study in email, but just some small segments of some things that maybe can help you transform and use some of the tools that you aren't using, because I assume everybody's probably using Outlook in here. Yeah, right? Okay, so for the record, that's a show of full hands in the room here. So the things we really need to encourage you about are really the next bullets, to really transform the way you communicate and collaborate with each other, and meetings and instant messaging are potentially part of that. And also then transform how you're dealing with files and folders through SharePoint and OneDrive for Business. So we'll focus on those as we move through, and I'll explain to you why it's a great place or a great thing to use, and that you'll still feel comfortable using these tools even though it's kind of a new way of doing things. So I'm going to start out, like probably many of us start out our day in Outlook. As you might expect, Steve and Andy and the team and I have been emailing back and forth as we refine some of the details for this full day that we're having here. of which you've been gracious enough to join us for one of the sessions. And so here's an email that Andy was talking about, the announcement that Steve was talking about around some new training that's coming for you all. Not force-fed training, but training that you would take of your own volition. And so maybe we had a conversation back and forth a bit, and I decided that it was time to have a meeting. So if I wanted to have a meeting with these folks, so Andy and Steve and Michael, what would be my easiest route to do a meeting from this point right now? What was that? Calendar. So calendar is an option, and that is a good option, and that's the way, but there's a shorter way to do it. Thank you for speaking up. There is a meeting button. Yes, ma'am, there is. And the scary thing is nobody knows it exists. But it's right there staring you in the face. So from that meeting button, which by the way has been there since Outlook 2010, so it's probably been there about 6 years now or so, just if we're counting at home. But that thing, all I have to do is click that button, and it'll use everybody that's on the 2 and CC lines and start a scheduling request without me even going to the calendar. I don't have to copy and paste email addresses. I don't have to type them right. I just hit the button and we're ready to go. And the other cool thing is they've got the full context of the email thread enclosed in the body of the email, letting them know what we're going to be talking about and what history has gone on to the point that said, you know what, we need to talk about this, right? Because that's essentially the point that I'm at here. Not that I had any difficulty with these folks and their team in scheduling this thing. So I can very easily transform, and that's really what we're talking about, right? Blurring the boundaries between one tool and the next so that we're just really focused on the effort of making something happen. I'm not thinking about that, oh, I need to hammer something, so let me go get a nail and a hammer. I just need to fasten this board to this other board. And magically, right, I move my hands close to the board and a nail's already in there and I've got an impact hammer that's going to drive it in for me. Or there's a screw already in the drill as I get the drill close to the board. I mean, that's the carpentry equivalent of what we're talking about here. And in fact, I may want to start that off with a little instant messaging session. So I'm going to minimize that for just a second to introduce this one. You can see here I'm on, does anybody know what the little red box with a white line through the middle of it means? It means do not disturb. So you probably might have seen that on some phones or something like that before. It's very similar to the do not enter sign that we see on the highway system as well, right? It's a nice way of saying no, no, no in that conversation. So I'm on DND because my presence right now is presenting my desktop in a webinar meeting, right? So I could literally have people join in from all over the world. They would hear me because of the microphone, and they would be seeing exactly what you're seeing on my screen. You can do this too. The only thing you're probably missing is a headset to make it happen. Yes, you can use your microphone and speaker in your computer. Your mileage will vary as far as the quality of the audio that you pick up within that environment. So these headsets may be $40, $50 or so. I like the wired headsets because they don't lose power, right? Where if you're in a wireless headset, like this little guy here, which is a Jabra Bluetooth headset, that happens to be the carrying case and charging station, that's about 130, right? So it's a different level of investment that has to be made in those. And in case you're curious, this little device in the center that looks like a little speaker, it's a little speakerphone attachment. So think if you've looked at the little boomerang ones that are in conference rooms scattered around, that's your Skype for Business conference room phone, or one of many options. That's about an $80 conferencing phone there. The whole point here, though, is that I can leverage these things for a meeting, and I can find out some status. So not only this, you pick the picture, by the way, if you want a picture. So you can upload and use whatever photo you want to represent yourself to all the rest of the employees here at the county. It's really handy if you're new, because that way you know who you're passing by in the hallway. So you don't say something you shouldn't when the county manager's walking by, right? That's always embarrassing. But also that you know who you're talking to when you walk down the hall, so if you want to ask them another question and such. And it just helps make this whole social interaction. I'm not saying turn your job into Facebook, for God's sake, no. But it does help to know each other and who they are. Plus, I have the status. So mine's on D&D. If it were green, I would be available. So I can go over here into my Skype for Business environment, and you see my colleague Dina Beeg. It says available, video capable. So it knows that it has a video camera on her device and that she's not busy. And it knows she's busy or not by either one, if she's actively doing something in Skype for Business, or more importantly and typically because of what her calendar in Outlook says. So it automatically puts you on busy if you've got a meeting in Outlook, right? Which makes total sense. What that would mean to me by it saying busy is that maybe they're available, maybe they're not, but I'm going to go ahead and instant message them anyway to get a question answered. And that's really what we're talking about here, is the ability to interact innately with your peers and get information very quickly. I would say particularly in emergency medical services, in law enforcement and such, there's a need to get clear, concise, and defined information out in particular periods of time. And instant messaging is well suited to do that because it can do it securely on any device, even if that device happens to be a mobile phone. And it can do it silently, right? So I can type in a message, get it out, have some information, surreptitiously respond, get information back, and nobody knows anything's been going on. And if we need to, you don't have to, but it can be logged. So if you want to see a chain of events that happen because you have to produce it for something, that's also something that Andy and the team can do, is turn on that logging on this instant messaging. So I could start out with an instant message and then escalate that into this webinar type meeting where we're doing audio and video and such. It really is one way to transform that. I'm going to go back to the meeting invite right now, though, because you'll notice it's just a regular meeting invite. So another way to get to a meeting is to simply schedule it. So right now, this is just a regular meeting where Andy and the team and I are expecting to show up in person because there's no phone number or other information. But that's where this Skype for Business button is here in the center of the screen. I can just hit that Skype for Business button and boom, right there in the bottom, it says join Skype meeting. So you may have seen me do that right as we were getting started so that I could start recording this session for posterity's sake. I literally just click on that, it fires into the Skype client and gets into the meeting interface, which we are in right now. So I'm not going to click it again, or otherwise it's kind of like crossing the streams in Ghostbusters, if you remember, right? Cats and dogs sleeping together, it's just a bad scene. You can't have a meeting within a meeting within a meeting, right? There's no nested meetings, and of course you'd never want to do that. You could be in two meetings at the same time, but what that means is you're putting one meeting on hold and joining this other meeting. So if you got double booked for some reason, you can actually flip back and forth between the two meetings. Just know that the audio you are hearing is cutting over to the new meeting when you switch over to it, and then cutting back to the meeting you were in when you switch back to it, right? You do not have the option, and hopefully it makes sense why you wouldn't want to do this, here simultaneously two audio streams, right? There's plenty of us that have that going on in our heads sometimes anyway. So in this way, I can go in and have this meeting, and you can see in this environment, I am actually presenting my desktop. Now, what I could also do within the interface, and it's this little icon here, this is what the meeting screen looks like when you're just in a meeting and not having someone share their desktop session. So I can go in here in these controls and notice I can turn on video recording. And so at that point, in the scope of sharing my desktop and such out, I can also share video out. So think about this in the guise of training or demonstration, right? We were talking about this with some of the folks at EMS, where you may have someone physically coming in for some sort of safety training, showing you in real life how to do something. Obviously, my camera right here on the bezel of my laptop probably isn't going to be the best route for that. But there are other devices, and any regular camera will help that happen. And you notice here, if I go in and put my face in front, you'll see the things actually picking me up. But there's another device that is pretty exciting called, formerly a Roundtable, now it's a Polycom CX5500, that we're all familiar with kind of the shape of the saucer section of the Starship Enterprise, right? Big disc with a gooseneck coming off of it. So think about if you took that thing and flipped it upside down so that the big disc is down on the top of this podium. And then the gooseneck is coming out of that podium, and it's got a cylinder about the size of my fist that's on top of that gooseneck that's got an array of cameras in it, and the base has an array of microphones. So what happens there then is that thing is the video and audio input device for the meeting. The microphone array can not only pull in the sound, but because it's an array, it can tell where the sound's coming from, which is really cool. So even with this tether, right, I can't stop it. I've moved around a bit. I could be here with one of those devices, and as I walk from the right of the podium to the left of the podium, that camera would follow me so that that video that doesn't have me but for that split second that I passed by, I would stay in the video frame the entire time. And it's not doing that by pan, tilt, zoom, moving the camera lens to follow me, like you may have seen some expensive camera setups. It's using software to track me based on the audio input and then repositioning my view between the cameras that are picking me up to keep me centered in the display as I walk back and forth. It's actually some really cool technology that came out about 4 or 5 years ago now out of Microsoft research that makes that happen. It's about a $3,500 device, but it replaces a 50 to, well, in the case of one I did for GlaxoSmithKline, a $2.2 million video conference room. We literally spent that much. It was in 1992, but for 12 people to do a video conference, right? This, if we're on a panel like we're here in the commissioner meeting room, and Mr. Cook starts speaking, it's going to go then and focus the high resolution video that you see in the screen there to him. Then if somebody raises a question, he stops speaking and we'll say, ma'am, it was you here in the black shirt. It would then focus on her because she was the one that was speaking and such. And that trade-off would happen back and forth. Or Steve and Andy decided, and I'm not saying anything about your character here, but we'll say for the sake of argument you were being belligerent in the conversation and we didn't want you flipping back and forth. They could lock it so that it only stays focused on the people up here that were actively speaking, and or choose who the active speaker is and lock it to them. So there's lots of control in these meetings. How many people can you have in these meetings, you may be thinking? 250. So quite a number. Probably not sufficient if we wanted to do a commissioner meeting through this technology, but there is a new service that Microsoft offers where you can get up to 10,000 people in a meeting at one time and have them being streamed this information. So that, considering how many people probably show up for commissioner meetings, that would probably be just absolutely fine, because we may get a few more if they decided they didn't have to show up. So there's lots of options here, and it's not just video and audio, which is what I've been primarily talking about. It's also, in addition to sharing your screen, I can present just a program. So we'll say for the sake of argument, it's budget time and I'm the finance director and I want to get a meeting with the department heads to go over the spreadsheet that we've put together for setting the fiscal year budget for next fiscal year. But I have other stuff that just simply is none of their business that's up on my machine at that point, and I don't want to close it out. So instead of sharing my desktop, I'd just share Excel. Now, if I had shared out the file via this tool called OneDrive for Business that we'll talk about in a little bit, they could each have Excel pulled up on their individual machines, and in the same file and co-authoring it with me as we made changes live to trade from this bucket to this bucket to then negotiate all the way up to the budget that we're going to present to the commissioners and have them vote on it. So there's all kinds of options there for interaction. If I wanted to provide a series of handouts to folks, I can add attachments to this meeting so that those are files that people can download. I can also do notes. Notice I have an option. I'm sure you probably can't read it back there, which is why I'm stating them verbally as well. I can do shared notes or just notes from me personally. So just out of curiosity of the folks in the room, how many people have used OneNote before? Oh, good. Well, you're the largest distribution, particularly for percentage-wise, of all the previous sessions. So kudos to you for knowing what it is and having used it before. Those that haven't, you owe it to yourself to check it out. You know, I see lots of pads of paper and such in here. We all do note-taking / information gathering. If you have a portable device, and as we move forward in the future, your quote-unquote desktop device should really be a laptop or tablet, you know, something even akin to the Surface Pro line, because of how transformative, right? That thing goes with you everywhere. So it's your little cache of all of the information and communication tools in one object. So you could take that in the room. We could start typing and get notes. And in fact, here I'll just click on my notes. And I'm going to take notes for myself at this point, but I could share them after the fact. So notice it gives me the context of one, it knows I was in a meeting when I triggered those notes to happen. It gave me the date and the exact time at which I started the meeting notes and that. So I have all that context associated with anything that I take notes in here. And then I can just simply start typing, right? Except for it didn't get the first. So it's complete editable text and everything like that, but I can also play with this guy here, a stylus. Anybody have like a Galaxy Note or something of that nature? Anybody got a stylus for their iPads or anything of that nature? No? No iPads. Huh, good. So if you've ever seen a stylus for an iPad, right, it's not a fine tip like this pen. It's more like an eraser. And the reason is because most portable electronics devices have a capacitive touch screen. Your phone has one. It senses the electrical changes that your skin makes in the display when you touch the matrix that underlies that Gorilla Glass, which is why, right, it's wintertime, probably a lot of us have worn gloves, and you don't have the right gloves and you try to touch the screen on your mobile device and it just looks at you. And it's because you've isolated the electrical properties of your skin from the display and therefore it doesn't work. So you have to have special gloves that mimic that electrical property. Well, Surface devices as well as other devices by Lenovo, Toshiba, Dell, HP and such have the same type of technology in them. But if they have a pen, then they have a secondary digitizer that's an active digitizer. And so what happens is when we get this pen close to the screen, it turns off the capacitive touch and only pays point attention to that pen. So I'm resting my hand on the screen and I can go in and sign my name. In fact, I can do other cool things here. So we did this in the last one. So I'm going to go in and grab Fast Track here. Oh, hey, look at that. It's my buddy. So I'm going to do a new screen clipping. No, well, it's not my buddy, but I'll go ahead and do this one again. He could have done a better job, I think, although it was his front line that I think let us down. So I've taken that screen clipping. I'm going to switch back to OneNote, and maybe right here we'll Control V, position my cursor, and there it is pasted in the environment. And I can go in and expand its size, but it's in there. So those of you that take notes on traditional tablets and such, if I said something about OneDrive and asked you a year from now to go back and find that note, do you think you'd be able to do it? Maybe, but it'd probably take a considerable amount of effort. What if it was 2 weeks from now? Still maybe, probably, but it'd still take you some effort. Well, what if it was something that you pasted in from a magazine, which is essentially what we've just done now with this screen clipping? Again, you'd have to leaf through, right? I know it's here somewhere as you leaf through the book. If we take notes this way, and by the way, this is free on all platforms. So I've preloaded and put the word entertainment in here, and look what's happened. Highlighted, you can't really see the highlight too well, but in the picture of Cam Newton, where I captured some of the navigational structure of the MSN homepage, it had the word entertainment in there. So what happens in OneNote on the fly is it's indexing everything. And when you search, not only is it searching through the text that you put in your notes, it's transcribing any handwriting, whether it be cursive or print, on the fly and putting that in the search index. And it's doing a screen analysis of any photos. And if there's text in there, that comes up in the search too. So think about how useful that would be if you were doing research, gathering information from multiple resources. This could be a screen scrape from a case management system. It could be whatever. And it's all populated in here. And I can actually get a summary page that shows everything where this then comes up. So this might be for study or for proof or whatever it may be. You can do this on iOS, Android, tablets, as well as Windows devices too. And it's free, but it's also installed for you by IT as part of your Office install on your device. If you have the pen and inking capability, great, but you don't have to have it to get really great value out of transforming the way you take notes here. And remember, it just doesn't have to be in the guise of a meeting, right? Remember I said that I had a meeting that I was going to schedule with Andy? Notice any meeting in Outlook that you've scheduled, there's a take notes on that calendar event that you can fire up, and it will associate the OneNote page with the meeting and tie them together so that they are correlated, that this set of notes goes with this meeting. And everybody that was in the list of attendees, they're going to be listed in the meeting, so you not only have the notes, but you have who was there with you in the meeting, whether it be a distance meeting through Skype for Business, or an in-person meeting, or what logically happens is some homogeny between the two, right? As the Sheriff's Department, I assume you guys have some remote facilities out at the coast as well? So we're having a main meeting here at the detention complex. We've got Skype for Business up, maybe one of the round tables, maybe not. And then we've got deputies joining in from some of the remote facilities scattered throughout the county so they don't have to drive in. And then we're going in and doing, we'll say, the safety training. Well, of course, invariably, right, we get some calls to go and respond to something at a house or out at the beach because it's, we'll say, spring break time. So some deputies are going to miss that meeting. Well, we've been recording it just like I'm recording this meeting so that we can post it up to the public safety section in SharePoint and make that available for on-demand playback, not for everybody in the county, but just for people relating to public safety within the county and such. So we have the ability to segment effort. So a great range of resources to really transform the way we're doing meetings. So if you haven't done Skype for Business before, or Skype for that matter, right, the personal thing, I would highly encourage you to try this out because it's really easy to go in and just hit that Skype button when we're creating a meeting, and then you can hit the join Skype button there or hit the link when you're actually starting that meeting to go and join in. Later, the county will probably have available a phone conferencing bridge, so if you wanted folks to be able to join in via a regular old telephone, they'll be able to do that as well. It wasn't that they were, waiting to do it or whatever. Microsoft has just started offering that as a service in the government community cloud as of January. So it's something relatively new that we're offering on a basis. Just for those of you that are considering, hey, maybe I want that, that is licensed from a Microsoft standpoint on the people booking the meeting. So it doesn't mean that even everybody in your organization would necessarily need that capability, just ones that would book meetings that we'd want people to join in via the phone conferencing bridge. So one flat fee for all of those. So we've been able to transform folks via meetings, but also we want to transform our files. And the way to do that is through something called OneDrive for Business. You see I've got it highlighted there. Has anyone here done any exploratory work in OneDrive for Business? A couple of you. Oh, good, good. So OneDrive, the personal storage stuff that you can sign up for a free account just on your own, that is not for county business, right? That's your personal stuff that goes with you. OneDrive for Business is for county stuff because it's under that security topology. It sits in that government security cloud with all of those extra rules and the CJIS compliance and such wrapped around it. And what this is a place for your stuff and your ability to ad hoc invite others to collaborate with you in conjunction with these files. So the multi-authoring that I talked about around the finance department and such, that would be something that we'd place up in OneDrive for Business and then invite others to collaborate with us in that document, possibly in a meeting, possibly not. So how it manifests to you is there's a OneDrive for Business sync client that gets installed on your machine. And it shows up in your file system just like you see mine there. In fact, you can see directly above where I've highlighted the OneDrive Personal. That's my stuff outside of my work at Microsoft, and then the stuff for my work at Microsoft under the OneDrive for Business. It's just a file folder on your file system. So how do you get stuff to this mysterious cloud thing? You simply drag and drop it onto OneDrive. Right? So I'm here on the desktop. If I wanted to take this letter, drag, and notice if you're not used to when you're dragging and dropping, I would highly recommend, right, there's two buttons on the mouse. Unless you're a Mac user, then there's only one. There's a right and a left button. The left button is the one that we point and click with, right? That's what allows us to click around. The right one gives us an option menu. So if you get used to, if you're not already used to, right-clicking, dragging and dropping, that's how I get that menu to pop up there. Very, very handy, because one big problem with dragging and dropping is our finger inadvertently sometimes lets up on the button too soon, and the thing drops, and we have no idea where it landed, right? We've all done that before. I know I have. So by right-clicking, dragging, and dropping, it always then presents you with this menu where you can go, oh, I didn't mean to drop it then. Cancel that and try it again. Or in this case, I'm really thinking critically here about, do I want to move it or do I want to copy it? You want to move it. And the reason why is we want one source of truth for all your documents and one point of collaboration and version control in those documents, and that's in the cloud, and it's called OneDrive for Business. If you keep outside of OneDrive for Business in My Documents a copy of that file, then invariably what's going to happen is sometimes you'll go to OneDrive and edit it, and other times you'll go to My Documents and edit it, and then you'll have two different versions with two different editing streams and such, and then you're going to catch it when somebody goes, hey, I thought we, right? And then you've got to go and sort it all out. So when you adopt this OneDrive for Business, just move the files that you depend on, and my guidance would be, if you want to keep it, move it to OneDrive. If you don't care about it, just delete it anyway, right? All your stuff should be in OneDrive for Business. You have unlimited storage, so don't worry about the space. We'll make more. But then it's in version control. So if you're in a collaborative editing environment, because this is technically a specialized SharePoint collection in the cloud, we can go and roll back to previous iterations of this. So if this is a policy document, you can have the latest version and look at version 8 version 7, version 6 that may go yearly way back through time. Very, very handy. And then we can Y off and create a new policy of something from 3 years ago if you wish. Also, it's backed up in the cloud, but even more magically, it's available everywhere. Right? So I have a OneDrive app on my phone. I also have a OneDrive for Business app on my desktop computer at home that's in my home office. So by dragging and dropping that DAD letter up into the cloud, it is now simultaneously making its way down to my desktop computer at home, which happens to be another work computer, so that's why I'm synchronizing it down there. And don't worry, the county has invested in tools that could prevent users from doing that as well. So if you have great fear as someone in management and information control that you don't want your folks to be able to downsync stuff to devices, but other than ones that the county controls that information, there are tools in IT's hands right now that they can turn that on and make that happen for you. In fact, we have tools in our hands that we can even put a wrapper around content that says, I give this to you, but you can only read it, and you can only read it for next week. And then it vaporizes, right? Or you can read it, but you can't print it, you can't edit, copy, edit, paste out of it, you can't forward it, you can't whatever. And that governs email and documents in this, guys. So pretty powerful environment. But that means, right, that my information is everywhere that I need it to do my job, as well as being physically here. So that DAD letter document, I haven't moved it just to the cloud because the sync client has it back down on this device too. So if I disconnect this from the cloud, that DAD letter document is still on this machine. It hasn't changed its residency. It's just also in the cloud now. Does that make sense? So you're not sacrificing the ability in an emergent situation, say if you're out in the field or at home, right, and something happens to this government center here, you still have on whatever devices access to things that have been synchronized. And if you can get a path back to the internet, you can go to OneDrive for Business online and so if I go here to, let me scroll back up. I can go back to my main screen at portal.office.com, which is where you'd log into. Well, at least I think I'm there. And click to access because I was already here from the previous session. I can click on this OneDrive. Oh, that's why it timed me out, so I wasn't signed in. I can click on this OneDrive icon here on the screen right there and get to it and see it in the cloud through a web-based interface. And it works with Safari or Chrome or Firefox or Internet Explorer Edge, whatever your favorite browser is. Microsoft has really made an effort to be cross-platform in these tools so that we can meet you where you want to be. So we've gone over a lot of stuff here right now. Hopefully you've seen some little nuggets that will help you transform the way you work. I really encourage you to try out Skype for Business, both from an instant messaging but also from a meeting standpoint. It really can help connect you with your peers, not only within the county but outside the county. You can invite whoever you wish to participate in these meetings with you in Skype for Business. And you've seen you can do meeting requests very easily from an email thread. You can click on the little jelly bean icon to start an instant messaging conversation that we scale out to include audio and video and such. And then you can go in and start that meeting, include documents, but those documents may be ones that we have in OneDrive for Business that really help transform accessibility and control and management of those documents. And that makes attachments and other things easier and version control easier as well. So Andy's going to make an announcement about a new service as we close out this session, and then I'll come back and recap it. So Andy?